Hello everybody, welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, bringing you a very special review, a spoiler-free review. I am of course going to be talking about Gladiator II, which is now out in cinemas here in the UK and is out in cinemas in America next Friday the 22nd of November. I've just got back from an IMAX screening tonight, a very packed IMAX screening, I'm actually going to say, on the opening night, and I'm excited to talk about this film. Maybe one of the first times Gladiator as a whole has ever been spoken about on the channel, so this is going to be hopefully a little bit of fun. As I said, spoiler free, I'm not going to ruin it for anybody, and maybe, just maybe, there'll be a spoiler discussion after the American release, given a little bit of time to maybe see it again or for other people to see it, so keep your eyes peeled for that. We will announce any of the videos on social media. linktree.com/cinemasavvy will pop you through to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd. Am I going to be adding Blue Sky to that at some point? Who knows, a separate conversation. But as always, I do want to hear from people at home, so please do comment your thoughts when you've seen the film. Please don't spoil it for anybody who hasn't. But if you've got any genuine questions that are spoilerish, drop us a DM on Twitter and we'll reply to them as soon as we can. So that's what I will say to that one. But my thoughts heading into this film. The first one's one of the greatest films of all time. It's not unfair to say that anymore. It got its reputation the way it does, and to be frank, Gladiator 2 is a film I didn't think would ever happen. A film we know had been skirted about, spoken about before. There was a very strange draft, I don't know if it was written by Nick Cave, where Maximus was going to be in purgatory. It was a very strange film. Thankfully that wasn't the case. This sequel is set 16 years later, starring Pedro, Pascal, Paul Mescal, Joseph Quinn, Connie Nielsen. I feel like I'm missing out a mega big name, Denzel Washington, the man of the hour, who I'll talk about a lot later too. A stacked cast. Of course, returning is Ridley Scott. It should not be possible to do this film without him, but we do have new Hans Zimmer, which is also another conversation to bring up. But I've been pretty hyped for this. I've been looking forward to this. I just saw the photos from the mega premiere the other day that took place in London. Its marketing is in overdrive at the moment. A lot of friends saw this at the press screening last week. I've personally held off to watch it at the IMAX, so I've been excited to see this for a whole variety of reasons. And also, it's gladiators. We get to see gladiators fighting. It doesn't happen in cinema often, and I'll talk about that experience side of things later because it was a great experience seeing this at the cinema. But I did wonder, is this film possible? Can this film be good? Does it need a sequel? And the kind of questions I go into that's going to stem into the review is, no, of course this film doesn't need a sequel, but you know how many sequels have been made that have been completely unnecessary? Far too many to name. However, this is a great sequel. You are never going to live up to the hype of the first film. You'll never be able to live up to such a personal story with Maximus, but of course it's also a story of Rome. And what this sequel does so well, it takes the political side of that first film. It looks at the idea of a legacy. I'm not calling it a legacy sequel, that subject term that's used too much these days, but the legacy of a character and individual, what that does to a city, and what could happen in the political discourse across 16 years that follow. And it really doubles down on the idea of Rome and the power that people can have within it. And I think this is where the film absolutely excels at its absolute best. It's the political discourse of it. And it's really interesting getting this from Ridley Scott. He's never shied away from his politics. Of course, he did the Napoleon film last year, a film which I thought was terrible. Had some great action set pieces, but the rest of it just didn't really live up to anything. I didn't care for it. But Gladiator 2, you take the great stuff from Napoleon, which was the action set pieces, and you get to do it again with a gladiator. You're going back to Rome, bringing in these other characters, some returning characters, what happened in the years that followed. And all these questions are answered, and I think displayed in a great way. I really have to completely say the direction I thought was really good in this film. Some people may complain about the simplicity of the story, but I think that's very unfair. I think maybe for one character, potentially the protagonist of the film, some people could say it's a two-dimensional character, a character arc. I agree, but I also disagree, and I can't really talk about that without getting to spoilers, so I'm not going to. But I do think that Paul Mescal was very good in this film. I haven't actually seen him in a lot of things. That's on me. I think I might have only ever seen him in The Lost Boy and various memes online about running away in parks and stuff like that. So I've been excited to see Paul Mescal in this. Joseph Quinn, another name, seen him in so many things. He's about to hit the big time, of course, with Fantastic Four as well. I thought he was great in this. Pedro Pascal, what more could you want? We got to see him do arena combat back in Game of Thrones. Too short an episode that was. We didn't get to see him back, but seeing him in this, the names they were putting forward sold the film for me. And I know Barry Keoghan was attached at one point and he had to leave the project, but again, the names that Ridley Scott's been able to bring into the fold. And I have to talk about the person who stole the show, the MVP, someone who's going to get nominated for another Oscar next year is Denzel Washington. Everyone was raving about him before the film came out. Oh, Denzel steals it, Denzel this, Denzel that. I was thinking everyone's going to be hyping up Pedro Pascal, or they'll be hyping up Joseph Quinn, or they'll pick their sort of online favourite and put them on the tangent. But all the discussions have been about Denzel. And I have to say he's the best thing in this film. He's by far the most interesting character in it. And his journey and his character progression, reaching its ultimatum as the film develops, is one that I think is great. And I think what Ridley Scott does really well with the sequel is, again, people are saying, oh, it's very simplistic, there's a similar story to the original. I don't think that's the case. They take a lot of ideas from the first film and they flip it on its head. Certainly with supporting characters in certain roles, maybe because I'd read too much about it heading in, I thought, this person's going to do that, that person's going to do this. And it wasn't that. And it wasn't subverting expectations either. It just felt like a really interesting political film that just happened to feature gladiator arenas fighting within the Colosseum. And it delivered. I mean, what more could you want from a Gladiator film, right? Not that we need a trilogy. There's talk of a third film already. But I am sat there thinking, you know what, if Ridley Scott wants to go and make another political film that just happens to have gladiators in it, so be it. You've got me on this one. A film I didn't think that could work, but does work. And if I talk about some of the action stuff, because I spoke about how much I enjoy the political side of things. Actually, I saw Conclave earlier this week. A review will come at some point in the next week or two. But I very much prefer, as I've got older, these political dramas. And again, this film does a really interesting subject, telling the political story that just, again, features gladiators within it. But if I talk about the action, the direction within that, the set pieces are great. The gladiator fights are great. Nothing feels like a carbon copy of the original, whilst it's not taking itself too far away to be something different from the original. Obviously, the trailers have shown the water sequence. I know there's a whole tangent on historical accuracy, which is something that the first Gladiator film didn't care for. This one doesn't care for. Does it need to care for? No, it's not trying to be accurate. It's trying to be entertaining. And I kind of side with the director on this one. And again, if you start bringing out that, put everything historical under a magnifying glass, there's a lot of films you love, which are going to be put to the test. And Ridley Scott's got the best answer for all of you on that subject matter. But I do think this film delivers with those. The water scene especially was very enjoyable, but the core story it's telling within the gladiator fight, within the arena combat, I think works with the main story overall. And that's where I'm with the film. I cannot help but praise it. It might be one of the best films I've seen this year. I know we're heading in November. I know it's that time of year, we're getting Oscar conversations. I think this film could feature heavily at the Oscars. I don't know if it'd win much, but I certainly see a couple of nominations getting scattered around in various departments. The costumes look great. The production design looked great. Denzel Washington, of course, was superb in his role. There are other actors that could maybe be up for something dependent on the categories, dependent on the competition. Connie Nielsen, I thought, was excellent in this film too. And I have to say that it really did surpass my expectations. Of course, as I said, it's not on a par with the original. Nothing probably ever could be, ever would be. And again, it wasn't designed in that circumstance. It wasn't trying to replicate the original in terms of its story, what it's doing. It isn't a copy and paste of Gladiator onto Gladiator II. It's telling something different. There's an evolution within it, and there's a story to tell. And it absolutely delivered with that, which is great, because if this film was terrible, I'm not saying it would ruin the reputation of the first one, but you'd always have the Gladiator 2 happened overhang it. A bit like Dumb and Dumber 2. Terrible comparison, but no one wants to talk about that second one. Whereas this, we kind of got ourselves in a good little zone. Like, you know what, Gladiator 2 was really good. And I'm happy for that. And I look forward to hearing what other people have to say about that. So, for me, myself, it is a massive recommendation. I do recommend you see this. It sounded phenomenal at the IMAX. One criticism I have of the film, and this was maybe something heading I wasn't too sure about, the soundtrack doesn't slap as well. The best parts of the soundtrack are the bits lifted from the first film. Hans Zimmer did not return to this film, which is understandable. I still don't know if he chose not to come back or if Ridley Scott chose not to use him. It seems to be varied in interviews that both sides sort of have that kind of acknowledgement. Personally, I feel the soundtrack wasn't at a level of that original film. And I think we all know what Hans Zimmer's capable of as a composer, so it's a shame that he did not get the chance to return. And if I'm really honest, that's like one of the only criticisms I have. I thought Paul Mescal was great, and I do think at times his character is two-dimensional, but I don't mind that because the character's purpose and story is fulfilled across the film, and it's the other characters around him that, yes, they may be more interesting, but he is still great in this. And again, it's not just copying that first one, which is what I thought it could do. And again, there's no issue with the performance. I don't have issues with the writing, the structure. The runtime flew by, 2.5 hours plus adverts. I was sold. It worked for me. As I said, I'm recommending it, and I do suggest people watch this at the cinema. After the second lockdown, the first film that the cinema reopened to was the original Gladiator. Seeing that at the cinema for the first time was incredible, and it was great to get the chance to see a second Gladiator film at the cinema. So that's going to round up this spoiler-free review. As I mentioned, there may be a spoiler discussion because I'd love to talk about the politics side more. It just depends who I could get on for a video to do that. So maybe there'll be something, maybe there won't be, but I do want to hear from you, so please do comment your thoughts on Gladiator 2, any other new releases you're looking forward to. I'm doing double recording. We're going to drop a Cobra Kai review on Sunday. I have seen the new part. That's been watched today, that's been recorded next, that's going to go up on Sunday. We've got a very special video going up, I guess technically later today, because this is going to go up probably past midnight. Our first episode of the Harry Potter casting series, that's going to drop at 6 PM tonight in the UK, so that's maybe by the time you watch this. And there's a lot of things happening, so I just want to thank everybody for their support over the last few months, everything we've been working on, the new videos, the new formats, any feedback's always suggested. So once again, thank you all, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.